The search continues for the father of a boy killed this weekend in a Laurel County fire. And we talked to a law professor who believes requiring people to vote would help elect more qualified candidates. And the latest on a possible shutdown at the southern border and what impact it could have on trade with Mexico.
Dedicated to eastern and southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News This Morning.
Good morning, I'm Connor James. We're slowly approaching 5:30. Let's check in with Brandon Robinson for a look at your forecast this morning, and still a little bit of a cold one out there, Brandon.
It is in some spots a little closer to 40 this morning, some spots a little bit above 40. Let's take a look at the cameras as you head out the door on this Tuesday morning, and a good morning to you. US 119 up on top of Whitesburg Pine Mountain is pretty good shape this morning. We have a freeze warning though in effect until 9 for about half of the region from basically Hazard and Breathitt County over toward Lee and Owsley counties back toward the Big Sandy and into southern West Virginia all the way to Charleston this morning. And you see on Live Pinpoint Doppler radar a little moisture trying to show up. We zoom in a little closer here and you see some pinks and blues showing up there. But again, temperatures don't match up for what we're seeing there on radar. So I think a lot of this may be the atmosphere not reaching the ground. 42 in Harlan right now, 38 Middlesboro, 37 London and Williamsburg. Some cooler spots, other spots across the area. But warmer air surging in from the south. Huntsville and Atlanta, 47 and 48 respectively. 12-hour planner, 59 today, but we can't rule out a straight chance for a shower, especially in those southern and southeastern counties a little bit later on. The rest of the forecast coming up here in just a few minutes. Connor?
Appreciate it, Brandon. Well, the search continues this morning for the father of a toddler who died in a Laurel County fire this weekend. Neighbors say Von Brock left the home shortly after the fire started. His son Joseph died. Police say they want to talk to Brock about how the fire started. Right now, the cause is unknown. A neighbor who didn't want to be identified says Brock was acting strange before he left.
He was just standing at the door. He was like, "My baby's in there. My baby's in there." And we was like, "Where's the baby?" He said, "I don't know." I mean, that right there just kind of shook me because I'm going to run back and get my kids. That's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm not going to run at the door. I'm going to run and look for my kids.
The boy's mother was at work at the time. Visitation for Joseph Brock is tomorrow night from 5 until 9 p.m. at the Community Harvest Church in Buckhorn. His funeral will be 11 a.m. Thursday, also at the church. And more than 1 month has passed since severe flooding has swept through our region, but many families are still dealing with the aftermath. Some people in Martin County are hoping for federal assistance from FEMA. One home that was washed away by floodwater back in February belonged to a mentally handicapped man who lived there for close to 5 years. Another family's home was destroyed after heavy rain in February caused a mudslide. Those we talked to are having to rely on the generosity from the community to get by.
Red Cross paid for us to stay here for 2 months. That's up in the end of April, so I don't know where we're going to go from there.
Officials with the State Emergency Management Office say they have received several requests for federal aid from Martin County. State officials are still working to submit those requests for federal aid. The requests include flood damage from most counties in eastern Kentucky and areas in western Kentucky that experienced similar issues. And orange water shocked neighbors who live in the Kimber community this weekend. But as WYMT's Marianne Fletcher reports, this is not the first time something like this has happened.
Something out of the ordinary.
Well, we're used to it. We take it for granted anymore.
But for some people, not so much.
It was redder than usual.
For many years, Bobby Spears calls the Kimber community of Pike County his home.
72 years. Born and raised here.
During the weekend, many people who passed through the area noticed something strange.
And I thought a mine might have broke loose somewhere or another.
Their streams looked like this. Unknown chemicals turned their water a rust color.
It ain't running red now, but it was Saturday and Sunday.
And although most of the water has returned to its normal hue,
it's went on for years.
The color change happened after employees of a nearby coal company cleaned out old ponds, causing chemicals to mix with the nearby creeks and streams.
It come up this weekend and some people put it on the internet and now they're talking about it.
Now Bobby and his neighbors hope the water does not harm anything in its path.
Because these mountains is laying full of water and it's got to go somewhere.
an unusually normal sight. In Pike County, Marianne Fletcher, WYMT Mountain News.
Pike County emergency management officials say they're not sure if the water was contaminated by accident. If you notice a change in the color of your nearby streams, you can call the Kentucky Emergency Response Commission at 1-800-255-2587. Switching gears now, a business in London is expanding and bringing new jobs. Schneider is expanding to do home delivery for things like furniture and carpet. They need warehouse associates. Those jobs will help load and unload freight while occasionally inspecting products. The starting pay is $12.50. The company also needs some regional truck drivers. You need a Class A CDL. We have a link to apply on WYMT.com. And on the other side of the coin, we learned another Laurel County business is making some hard choices. Conduit in London is laying off nearly 100 people. In a statement, Conduit said it's part of their strategic transformation initiative. They said, quote, reductions in workforce are the toughest decisions employers must make, and we take these decisions seriously. We will provide a separation package to all eligible employees. Officials say the cuts will take effect on May 21st. And an organization in our region is training the next generation of skilled workers. eCami trains people in monitoring and programming CNC machines. Those are computer numerical control machines that produce parts from metal for a variety of industries. Located in Paintsville, the institute has already drawn possible employers to the region.
eCami has already had companies looking at the area to locate here to expand their operations here.
We give everyone all the tools they need to succeed. The only thing they have to bring is the motivation and a good attitude.
Since the institute began including this graduating class, 60 people have gone through the program with a 100% job rate. You can watch the full issues and answers where this is featured on WYMT.com. And in state news, Governor Bevin is not happy with the federal judge who struck down work requirements for people with Medicaid in Kentucky. The plan would have required Medicaid beneficiaries in the state to either get a job, volunteer, or go to school to receive benefits. The governor told our Washington bureau he thinks the judge's ruling is irresponsible and that he doesn't care about whether or not people are healthy. As Kentucky heads toward the primary election, a University of Kentucky professor of law says the country would be better off if everyone was required to vote. Turnout for local Kentucky elections in 2015 was about 30%. Professor Josh Douglas says if everyone cast their ballot, it would be better to indicate the best candidates for the job.
I think we'd have a much more informed electorate because people would take the time to learn about candidates. Sure. You know, in Australia, where they have mandatory voting and turnout of 90–95%, there's no indication that the voters are less educated.
Coming up in our 6:30 half hour, hear about ways some states are trying to at least improve voter turnout. In the coming months, drivers across Kentucky will be able to get their hands on the new driver's license. Victor Puente takes us to 2 counties that show us what changes will be made.
The system for those new IDs is scheduled to be in place statewide in June. But for some counties in our viewing area, those new licenses may be available by the end of the month. Franklin and Woodford counties are set to be the first 2 counties in Kentucky getting those new driver's licenses. The circuit clerk here in Fayette County tells me Lexington might be soon after.
Right now we look like we're on schedule to have the Real ID rollout between the end of April and the month of June.
Those new IDs will bring Kentucky into compliance with the Real ID Act, which was passed in 2005. Under the new system, Kentuckians will have their choice of 2 different IDs, a standard one that allows you to drive and vote, and a voluntary travel ID that would allow you to fly out of airports and go into restricted federal facilities.
The extra documents they'll be needed for the voluntary travel ID, but again, if you're not going to travel, then it's really not necessary unless you choose to do so.
The rollout is expected to be finished statewide by the end of June. But if you have a current license, you don't need to run out and make the change the very first day they're introduced.
So there really is no reason or necessity to rush in when we get the new credential. I have mine in my pocket and it will remain there until next year.
Riggs says if you've already gotten a new driver's license this year, it'll only cost you $15 to upgrade to one of the new Real IDs. In Fayette County, Victor Puente, WKYT.
Those new IDs will be manufactured out of state and mailed to drivers within 5 business days. You'll receive a temporary ID unit until it arrives. And President Trump continues to threaten to close the southern border, but White House officials say they haven't looked at what that could mean for trade with Mexico. The president says he made the threat due to the influx of thousands of Central American migrants seeking asylum. Experts say a border closing could cost billions of dollars in trade.
A bilateral trading relationship with Mexico is between $550 and $600 billion a year. If you think you're going to stop that trade at the border, then you're looking at almost $2 billion a day that you're going to be losing in lost trade.
President Trump is expected to visit the southern border on Friday. This weekend, the State Department took steps to cut off aid to El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. And the U.S. Census Bureau has prepared 2 versions of the survey for next year's 2020 census. One version includes a question asking if the person is a citizen. The other version does not have the citizenship question. The version that is ultimately used hinges on a U.S. Supreme Court ruling on the validity of the controversial question. The decision is expected in early summer. And 2 competing disaster relief bills failed to advance in the Senate Monday in a funding fight for hurricane-ravaged Puerto Rico. The Senate first voted down a Republican proposal that Democrats said did not give enough aid. The second measure that failed was passed in the Democratic-controlled House months ago. Republicans criticized it for not providing relief for recent Midwest flooding. Meanwhile, a partial bridge collapse in Chattanooga shut down a portion of Interstate 75. It's impacting people traveling north. A concrete railing fell where I-24 and I-75 split. Now, back in 2017, Tennessee's transportation commissioner called the split the worst intersection in the state. It's unclear what caused the collapse. Well, coming up, we talk to one Leslie County student who recently received a letter that could forever change her life.
Frosty for some this morning, not so much for others. I'll tell you when temperatures will improve for all in about 3 minutes.